I'm so back. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here then hi, I'm Abby and here we talk about books all of the time. As I'm filming this video, it is the 1st of April, which marks of course a new month. Spring has officially sprung in this house, and that does indeed mean that I now get to talk about all of the books that I read in March. And let me tell you, I did really well. I decided in March that I wasn't going to set myself a predetermined TBR like I had been doing for the previous 2 months of this year, and instead just mood read. I actually filmed a week of March and uploaded it as a reading vlog so you could see what I was doing, what kind of moods I was reading, and what mood reading is, I suppose. And if you watched my February wrap up, you will know this is a drastic turn of events, having read 10 books in March. Yeah, thank you. I don't think I've had this successful of a reading month in the longest time, potentially forever. I don't think I've ever read this books in a month, so that's exciting. As you can see, they're all here. I read quite a variety this month, last month, and I'm really excited to talk through them all with you. So without further ado, let's talk about the books that I read in March. So the first book that I read in March was Hope Street by Mike Gale. My friend from work has been talking about this author for so long, and she knows how much I love Frederick Beckman, so recommended me Mike Gale as kind of like the same vibe, same writing style, and it sold me these books, hand sold them to me in the office. I literally pulled up my phone and ordered this book right there and then as she was describing it to me. I was really excited to give this author a try. From what I can gather, he has a very large fan base and people love and read his works religiously. I am a huge fan of party rings, and that's something else that sold this book to me. The illustrations of the party ring and the coffee, it was almost insufferable. Every time I picked this book up I was like, oh, I want a party ring, I want a cup of tea and a party ring. Detrimental, but a gorgeous cover. This book tells a very heartwarming story of Connor, who is the last remaining resident of Hope Street. Everyone else on this former estate has had to flee their homes because of a new building project started by the council. Connor has been getting loads of notes saying that he has to move out, he doesn't have a choice, they want to demolish his building, but he refuses because 3 years ago his mum went missing and never returned, and Connor believes that she is out there somewhere, she's going to come back for him, and he needs to be in Hope Street for when that happens. I absolutely flew through this book. It's told in 3 separate perspectives. We get Connor, Bernie, Connor's mum, and then we get Lila, who as a local journalist has taken a shine to Connor and his story. She finds herself so deeply drawn in by Connor and his world that she ends up really wanting to help him and get his story across and help find his mum. This book is quite short, but it does indeed tackle a lot of very important cultural and societal issues. The main one I feel tackled is gentrification and the way that people with learning difficulties and neurodivergency are treated and viewed by the rest of society. It was such a heartwarming read. I did end up giving this book 3.5 stars, and I'm going to try and explain why that was, because even though I did really enjoy it and I really liked the story, I thought it was really impactful, really important, something just, it just wasn't, something that was a bit flat. You know when something's just missing? And I know a lot of us say 5 stars is a feeling, like ratings are just feelings, and that is completely the case with this book, because I cannot wait to read more from this author. He's got an incredible backlist and I can't wait to dive in, but as a start I wasn't overwhelmed with this book, and I think there's a few reasons for that. Number one, I would say I felt our female main character was a little bit flat. When I was reading her POVs, they were the least enjoyable to me. I much prefer Bernie's, the mother of Connor, who has obviously gone missing, and we get her flashbacks to life when Connor was growing up, as well as Connor's in present day. And Lila's, it was my least favourite to read, and it also felt like the least eventful, and I feel like quite repetitive in some cases. And I'd say that the only real characteristics that she had was having her job, caring about her job, and caring about Connor. I didn't believe in the relationship that she developed in this book, and I thought that the characterization of the guy, I won't spoil it, but the person that she ends up with, was a bit off. I thought at the start that he was supposed to be a bad guy, a bad character, and it felt a bit sinister, and I didn't really understand that way of writing other than protectiveness. But yeah, anyway, it didn't really work for me, and I wasn't very much interested or bothered by this relationship. I also thought the ending felt a bit flat for me. I thought it was quite predictable, but also quite unbelievable in a sense as well, and it ended up feeling quite anticlimactic and disappointing. I don't know, I was satisfied but not overly impressed or overly overwhelmed by the story as a whole. I can't say too much because I will spoil the story and how it ends, but yeah, the unbelievable aspect, I just do not see how what had happened could have realistically happened. I'll leave that to your interpretation. But as I said, I really enjoyed his writing, I really enjoyed his storytelling, I really enjoyed getting to know these characters and where they lived and all about Hope Street. It was very heartwarming. It just wasn't my favourite book, but most of the reviews I found are 5 stars, so maybe I am in the minority, or maybe it's just his fan base getting to these books first. But as I said, I will be reading more of Mike Gale, and this was a great book to start with. Almost immediately after I finished Hope Street, I then went straight on to reading The Unworthy by Augustina Bazterrica, a copy which was given to me by Pushkin Press. January and February, I read Tender is the Flesh by this author, and I absolutely loved it. I had so much to say about it. I took away so much from the story, from the book, from the writing. So I was so excited to see that this book was coming out. It was coming out imminently, and I thought, oh my gosh, I need to read this. If it's anything like Tender in the Flesh, I know I'm gonna love it. But let's just say it wasn't anywhere near as good, in my opinion, as Tender as a Flesh, and I was left feeling a little bit deflated, a little bit disappointed. It is a very short book, coming in at just under 170 pages. I flew through the pages still, I whizzed through the story, but I didn't take much from it. In fact, I probably couldn't really tell you much about it or the plot, but just because I feel like there really wasn't one. The Unworthy starts and we are dropped into a dystopian future. We see a bunch of women living what essentially is a cult, closeted away in a secret religious order set far in the future when the world outside has been reduced to chaos after, from what I can gather, a disastrous climate change impact. I don't even know. I think outside the walls, animals are mutated. It's not safe. Humans are basically not human anymore. I think, like, this story doesn't really tell us much. It does not give us much away, which in some places, in some stories, really works. But when you're having to, like, flick back and forth through the pages, like, have I actually missed something here? Like, why are you not telling me anything? Like, I don't need to be told things, but I need to be shown things. I don't think this book was doing that, and I don't like being kept in the dark as much as I did or was reading this book. It left me feeling a bit unfrustrated and unsatisfied. I wanted to know more about the world. I wanted to know more about these women, who they were, where they came from, but we just don't get to know any of that. And the little flashes that we do get were very entertaining, and I was lapping them up. There just wasn't enough of them, and there wasn't enough to really have me invested in the characters or in any of their stories. There's one thing that can be said about Augustina Bazterrica, is that her writing is fantastic. It's very atmospheric, it is very intense, it will make you feel things, but yeah, in this case, the characters and the plot weren't really there to back that writing up and that aspect of her writing up. So it did fall a bit flat for me, unfortunately. I'm sure there's people out there who would absolutely love this way of writing, love the style, but not me, I'm afraid. I still liked it. I just thought, when you're not giving us much and you're kind of expecting us to grasp at stories and to be really entertained and want to know what's going on, you can't then make your plot very repetitive. I don't know, just a bit flat. I did enjoy the ending. I thought that was fun, but again, not as much of a climax as it should have been, and there was no really build up to it, in my opinion. So yeah, second read of the month was The Unworthy by Augustina Bazterrica. After I read The Unworthy, I needed something quite light-hearted and fun to sink my teeth into, and of course we had the release of Wildside by Elsie Silver. If you know me, you know I love Elsie Silver. She is my queen, thank you. I had been excited about this book. I recently had read Wild Eyes and Wild Love, other way around, but yeah, I read those 2 books from the Rose Hill series. This one was coming out. I was really excited because I'd loved the tidbits that we got from Reese and Tabby in the other stories, and I had high hopes. And let me tell you, they were not let down. I was not disappointed by this story. Saying it now, I said it in my reading vlog, I think this is my favourite Elsie Silver. Potentially, if I had to say, maybe tied with Willa and Cade, but I think their dynamics and the characterizations are quite similar, and there's definitely a theme here that I like in my Elsie Silver books. I don't know if you can tell, but to me it was just perfect. I absolutely loved Reese and Tabby's story. I loved how there was something a lot more deeper going on in the background with this one, and Elsie tackled that very sensitively and I think very well, in my opinion. He has you rooting for these characters so hard, and the yearning in this book was unmatched. It was so good, and I loved them so much. They're both so swoon-worthy, adorable, love them so much, so strong, so badass, but also I love how they're vulnerable with each other and they learn how to let their guards down and just kind of experience life and experience what they're feeling and let it out together. I think you can tell from the way I'm speaking about this book that I loved it. It was just the dual pov in Elsie Silver never fails to get me right in the feels. I think she does so well, and in this book in particular, I enjoyed it a lot. I very much enjoy when a man is head over heels feral for a woman, but she is so unreachable and cold and distant, and also likes to take the charge. You know what I'm saying? That's what I like in my books. And like I was saying, reminiscent of Willa and Cade, who are and always will be my loves, but Recent Abby may have taken / tied with top spot. And I know a lot of people have opinions about this book and say whilst they loved it, one aspect of it gave them the ick and kind of ruined the story for them. And I couldn't disagree more. I loved that aspect of the story. I thought it was so fun, and we needed something lighthearted to kind of outweigh the drama and intensity of their story, and I think that was a really cool aspect of it, and it worked really well in the context, I think. Anyway, I didn't get the ick, but maybe that's just me. I just have come to feel so at home in Rose Hill. I don't want to leave this world. I know there's one more book coming out in September and then we leave Rose Hill for good. It genuinely pains me to say that because I love this book series more than Chestnut Springs. There, I've said it. The way I feel reading this book, I felt so cozy, so warm, so at home, like these were my friends. I don't want to leave that. So yeah, Elsie Silver, you've done it again with Wildside, so I thank you. After that, I then went on to read Fable for the End of the World by Ava Reid, which is her new YA dystopian standalone book. I've never actually read any Ava Reid before, so I was really excited to dive into this book. I really like the concept. I'm really in my dystopian era after reading Silver Elite, have not forgotten it, and Del Rey are just killing the game. So I knew I had to get to it soon, and the fact that it was a standalone really enticed me as well. This story follows a dystopian future much like The Unworthy, in a world ravaged by climate disaster and climate change. The world is kind of underwater by society under Ceres, who dictates the lives of every single person. People can choose to rack up their debt in an extreme way to get basic needs and necessities, but also to treat themselves in this dystopian future. And you are allowed to accumulate so much debt that it enters you into the Lamb's Gauntlet. This is essentially the Hunger Games. One person will be nominated from the person in debt, and they will choose someone to represent them in the Lamb's Gauntlet, where they will have to spend 2 weeks or 13 days or something like that running away from a trained killer, genetically enhanced and trained from birth to be an assassin, to ultimately track them down, end their life, and everything of it is broadcast for the rest of the world to see. Very intense, and I really like the sound of it. When I was reading it, I was hooked from the first page, devouring the story, loved getting all the tidbits of the world, lots of information. I really enjoyed the main character's voice. I really enjoyed her and her brother's relationship, and the characterization of her mother, who is the one that nominates her for the Gauntlet. We are also given the perspective of Melanie. I'm not sure how to actually say it, but she is the assassin. Her last Gauntlet, she showed signs of human weakness and didn't want to end the life of her lamb, and it's kind of playing on her mind. They're trying to wipe her memory so she doesn't remember it. Anyway, this is her chance, this is her challenge to prove herself that she can indeed do her job, and she will end the life of the next lamb in the Gauntlet. Like I said, I loved it up until about halfway through. I thought it was really exciting, I thought it was really tense. I loved hearing more about this world, this universe. How do I say it? I felt the second half was very flat. I wasn't as invested, and I didn't think the stakes felt as high as they did in the first half. It was a bit insta-lovey for me, in my opinion, and I felt like it was very unbelievable what happened when it happened and in the time frame that it did happen. Maybe it's just me being a cynic, didn't believe it, and I wanted to believe it. There was also a few plot inconsistencies in this that I just couldn't ignore. In one scene, a character is badly injured, and then 2 seconds later they're like making out and doing other things, and I'm like, wait, weren't you like severely nearly dying a second ago? But we've just forgotten about this. Okay, fine. I feel like when you have a standalone book and you're building a whole universe and a whole world, audience and your readers are obviously going to want to know as much as they can about this world, and I think when that completely disappears in the second half of a book and is replaced by what is essentially just the romance of the story, I don't know, I just felt like I was left wanting more and I wasn't satisfied. I'm like Hamilton, really. I will never be satisfied. I also felt like as the story went on, it became very hard to distinguish the 2 main voices in the story, which isn't ideal because it's supposed to be very different from 2 completely different worlds, but their voice to me just kind of merged into one. I think this is a really good YA book. I think for what it is and for being a standalone, it tells the story quite well, but there's just quite a lot lacking in my opinion. It felt a bit insta-lovey, as I said. It's not my favourite trope. If it's yours, you might like it. I think maybe it felt like the author forgot where she was going with the story, or what she'd already told us in the first half of the story later on, and the character development just wasn't enough there for me to then believe what happened. So that is my opinions on Fable for the End of the World by Ada Reid. I did, however, read it very fast and very quick. So yes, I would also love to hear any of your thoughts and opinions on this book or any of the books that I talk about in this video, just to see if I am in the minority or the majority, because who knows. I then went on to read one of my most anticipated reads of 2025. I was counting down the days to this book released and was so convinced that I was going to love it. It's going to be a 5-star read. One of my favourite books of the year. So much so that I bought 2 copies of it before I'd even read it. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. But it is indeed Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. I had seen a lot of people on social media saying that this was really disappointing, they didn't like it, it wasn't as good as Ali Hazelwood's other books, yada yada yada. And I always looked at those videos and thought, ha, I don't think I'll agree, I know I'm going to love it. Like, I was so convinced this was going to be my new favourite book. And I don't know if I just set myself up too high to fail, because I was so disappointed with it. And I ended up giving it 3 stars, which on reflection was maybe a bit generous. I don't know. I just, every time I think about it, I get annoyed because it had so much potential. And I want it to be so much more than it was. One of my main gripes is that I was promised something from this book going into the story, and I don't feel like in all of the pages that it was delivered. And that's fine. Like, the content I didn't necessarily need, but when it was marketed in such a way, it's what I was expecting. So when I didn't receive it, I was kind of like, am I missing something? I've spoken to a few people with the same opinion. I've also spoken to so many people who disagree with me and say this is the best Ali Hazelwood they've ever read, their favourite 5 stars. And I'm genuinely very happy for them, because I wish that could have been me, but it wasn't, and it's not. I did, however, love the sporty element of this book. I loved hearing all about the diving, the competitions, the training, the therapy aspect as well. I thought it tied in really nicely with that. But I think there was also too many other plot points that were trying to be told at the same time that it felt like we weren't getting enough of each. Therefore, each one felt a bit lackluster. For example, the STEM college storyline I don't think was essentially needed in this book. Shock horror, I know. Too many side plots to fully get invested in one singular one. And I hope that this is a safe space for me, that I found Lucas so incredibly bland and boring, and I didn't like him. I just didn't get it. I just didn't get the allure. Yeah, that's all I'll say about that. Scarlett as a character was fine. She just read a little bit younger than what she was intended to be. She was fine. Didn't get that annoyed when I was reading her, but yeah, she wasn't my favourite MC. When the story's about those 2 characters and you're not really invested in either of them, it's harder to get like behind it and enjoy it. I know a lot of people are going to be watching this disagreeing with me, and I'm sorry, but also not. I did not like the whole my best friend is your ex trope, and in some cases I was a bit like, yeah, I'm on the ex's side here. There's one particular thing that happens that I won't spoil, but I was thinking, are we trying to justify this and say like the pen is a bad person here? Because I would also be fuming. I'd be furious. And I thought it was a bit weird. Okay, I've said it. I have felt so much from reading Ali Hazelwood books in the past. Not in Love is actually one of my favourite books of all time. I love the romance in that. I love the story. But this and Deep End wasn't my favourite, and I was expecting a lot more. I think maybe that's where I've gone wrong. I set my expectations far too high and then had farther to fall in the disappointment. I don't think this story was for me, but if it's for you, that's great. I genuinely am very happy for you. Wish it was for me as well, but alas, it wasn't. And again, I was disappointed. I can't lie, I was. I then went extremely rogue and picked up The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, which is on my top 100 books of all time poster, and I've been meaning to get to this one for a while to scratch it off, but I just for some reason didn't pick it up. I had every belief that I would read this book and not like it. I thought going in, I know full well this is going to be like a 2-star read for me, something that I would have read at school and absolutely hated, something that a lot of people are forced to read at school but I never was. So I was feeling a bit cocky, feeling like, oh, I know myself, like, didn't enjoy Deep End that much, probably not going to enjoy this one. But tell me why I had a great time and actually really enjoyed this book. No one is more surprised by that fact than me. I had no idea what this book was going to be going into it, but it comes in at just over 200 pages, so I thought that's quite manageable. But when I say the text is set like this, like the whole way through, oh, a chore. And I felt like I wasn't going to be able to read it as quickly as I'd hoped. But little did I know that I'd fly through this book and read it in like 2 sittings in one evening. So there's that. This book follows Holden, a 16-year-old boy who is kicked out of his school. This is not the first time this has happened either, so we're kind of like, why has this happened again? What's going on? And the story takes place over about 2 days, I think, where he's just travelling around completely lost, not knowing what to do with himself. And it's a great depiction of isolation and of loneliness and of just losing your way a bit from adolescence into adulthood. And I could relate to a lot of things that Holden was thinking and feeling in a lot of these moments in this book. And you can't help but feel quite fondly of him. Like, he is annoying, he's extremely repetitive, and he does things that you question. But at the same time, you're like, I do have a soft spot for you. I don't know if we could trust a lot of what he said in this book, but I still enjoyed reading it, and I really enjoyed its depiction, and I think I would have had a lot to say about this if I did study at school. I just ended up having a really nice time reading this. I really felt like I got to know Holden in what is quite a short book, and was genuinely surprised by how much I did like it and enjoy it. And it was evoking quite a lot of emotion from me, which I wasn't necessarily expecting either. So yeah, a nice pleasant surprise in March that was quite random, quite road choice for me, but I am very glad that I chose this book. So there's that. Catch You in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. It then came to March 11th of 2025, and there was only one book on my mind. There was only one book that I even cared or considered reading, and it was, of course, Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, which is the only book that I've ever tabbed whilst reading. I've already posted a 30-minute video talking all things about Sunrise on the Reaping, doing a deep dive into the story and my thoughts on the story. Some theories are thrown in there as well. It's been about 2 weeks since I've read this book, and I have not for my life stopped thinking of it since. When I tell you I've been waiting over a decade for this story, for this book, I really am not lying. I'm telling the truth. To finally have read it, to finally have this book in my hand, feels to me still right now very uncanny. It was even more harrowing, hard-hitting, heartbreaking, emotional, fantastic, incredible than I ever expected it would be, or ever hoped that it could be. I will be doing a reread at some point of the main trilogy, Ballad, and this book again, because I feel like there's still so much that I've missed. I have loved reading all of your comments on my video, sharing your theories, sharing your thoughts. It's so nice to have a community of people who love this book, love the series so much, that we're still talking about it and we have so much to say about it. I know Suzanne has famously said that she would not write another book unless she has something to say, and believe me, she has a lot to say. I loved this book so much. I cried a lot, I tabbed a lot, and I felt a lot of things. If you have also read this book and want to know what I thought in depth, then you can go and watch that video. But for this video, I will just say this is probably my favourite book from the Hunger Games universe. I mean, just look how much I tabbed. And I never tab. I've never tabbed a book in my life, but look how much. It's just pure talent in a book. I just feel very lucky that she has decided to share this story with us and we get to read it and we get to witness it. I don't think there's anything left to say that I haven't said about this book already, but yeah. Sunrise on the Reaping. I think my first 5-star read, maybe, of this year. Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Perfection. In a similar fashion of what happened after I finished The Unworthy, after I read Sunrise on the Reaping, I needed something light-hearted, something fun, something upbeat. And of course there's only one person I turn to for that, and it is Elsie Silver. And this time I decided to start reading the Golden Rush Ranch series, which is another collection of characters and stories set in the Elsie Silver universe. The first book is Off to the Races, and I've always claimed that Elsie Silver can do no wrong. She can never let me down. I'm gonna love all of her books. That was actually before I read this book. No one is more upset about this than me, but I really did not like this book. I really didn't like it, and I was so shocked and I was so upset. Tell me why I felt a bit betrayed that I didn't like this. And one thing I will say is you can tell 100% that this is one of Elsie Silver's first book. If you gave me Wildside and you gave me this book and I didn't know who the author was, I would swear blind that this wasn't the same author. They were two completely separate, different people, because that's genuinely how different this felt to her other works. I've loved all of them. I did not think I would encounter an Elsie Silver book that I didn't like. In fact, I was confident that I wouldn't. And then I read this. I think my main gripe with it was that I genuinely could not stand Billy and I could not stand Vaughn. And therefore, I had no interest in reading about their relationship at all. I, in fact, was hoping they wouldn't get together because they were so insufferable. I think Billy had more chemistry with the horse that she was training, and I enjoyed reading more about their moments together, their tenderness, and her training that horse, than I did reading about her alone or with Vaughn. Vaughn is just a big man baby, a rich big man baby who thinks everybody fancies him. He believes that his mum has set him up to get with this girl. I couldn't believe what I was reading, to be honest. He just doesn't get more likable. You expect him to have this big growth and go on this character arc, but it just doesn't happen. And Billy, oh, I've never met more, I will say it right now, of a pick-me girl when I was reading this book. She's supposed to be this very independent, can-do, sassy attitude girl, but in reality, she just is very annoying, very childlike. And the things that she's supposed to be saying that are badass just made me cringe so much, actually physically recoil. And I don't want to sound like a hater, but I'm being a hater, and this book made me a hater. I will, of course, continue the series, but yeah, this book did not do it for me. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the main characters. Disappointingly so. I don't think I have much more to say. I think we all know how I feel about it. After that, I then randomly just picked this book up on a whim and decided that I was finally going to get around to it, and it is The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. I love Holly Jackson. I really love A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and I did have a fun time with Fire Survive, so I had high hopes for this book. I really thought I'd like it. Don't know why it's taken me so long to get to it, to be honest with you, but I finally did. I thought the premise sounds really fun. Essentially, this story is based 16 years after a woman goes missing in a small town, and she leaves behind her daughter, her husband, and her family. And in present day, there's a documentary being made around her disappearance, and all the family are involved, getting interviewed, talking about the disappearance and how it's affected their life, when, lo and behold, Rachel Price comes back from the dead and back into her family's life, or tries to come back into her family's life, but her daughter is somewhat reluctant to accept her. Something fishy's going on. She doesn't believe her mum or where she says she's been for all these years, and hence we have a kind of investigation case going on. I was very gripped first when I was reading this and had high hopes for the story, but it let me down. I thought some aspects of the story was so absurd that I was kind of like giggling to myself, like, this can't be real. Like, am I actually meant to have believed that this has happened, or that these characters are switching up like this so fast? Felt like they lost their personalities a bit. I thought the romance plot line was just kind of thrown in there and was trying too hard to be reminiscent of Pip and Ravi. I don't think Holly Jackson's female main characters have much of a personality, and by that I mean they all kind of read as the same character, the same quirks, the same inner thoughts, the same jokes that they make. It was getting a bit boring and a bit repetitive as I was reading. The ending infuriated me to no end. I thought it was a bit silly and a bit far-fetched, like I said. It was entertaining at the start, a massive lull in the middle, and entertaining again at the end, but entertaining in a strange, funny, almost unbelievable, weird way. And it is quite a long book, and there's not that much reveals that we get. I felt like when we were reading A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, there was things thrown at us that Pip uncovers that were enough to like feed us and have us more hungry for the story. Where in this case, I was just kind of waiting for it to be over with, and more of a just not really caring what actually happened, just wanting to know so I could move on with my life. But I don't think we were offered much else in terms of the middle of the story, and that was kind of a problem for me. I'm very upset about it, I can't lie. I did think I was gonna absolutely love it, because I love the premise, as I said. Just fell a bit short for me, and wasn't that entertained, wasn't that bothered. I feel like I'm being so miserable and harsh in this video, but what can you do? But I'm sorry, I do still love you, Holly Jackson, and I am very excited to read your adult book. So then, to finish off the month of March, I decided to read Softcore by Brittany Newell. I was just basically enraptured by this cover, picked it up off the shelf, bought it and read it instantly, and I'm happy to say I had a very good time and I enjoyed it very much. The story follows a baby who is a dancer at a strip club, feeling a bit lost and not really knowing what to do with her life or do with herself, until her ex-boyfriend, who she's currently living with, randomly disappears and doesn't come back. His job is full of suspicious and illegal activities, so she can't really look for him via the police, so she feels completely at a loss and at a lost end in her life. I absolutely love reading about chaotic, messy women, and this book delivered it to me, to my doorstep. Thank you. I loved hearing all the stories from the other girls at the strip club. Baby also gets a job at a fetish house almost, and we get to hear a lot of stories, which I then found out was based on real life experience from the author herself, which made it even better to read knowing the context behind it. It's a book centered mainly around desires fantasy and relationships. I just really liked it. It was very reminiscent of Sugar Baby, which is another one of my top reads. I love reading chaotic women as unreliable narrators. And one thing I will say is Brittany Law has a very good way with words, and the way she writes is quite poetic in some senses. She uses metaphors very, very well, and I was finding myself highlighting, because I read it on Kindle, quite a lot of her phrases. It felt very impactful, it felt very meaningful, and it wasn't just words. The one thing I will say is I didn't feel like the story went very far. I think we got to explore a world and then we're kind of left. I didn't think we were offered any solutions or given much in terms of a conclusion, which I guess is the point, but still it's quite unsatisfying when that happens with certain aspects of the story in particular. Overall, I had a really good time. I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed the story, enjoyed the characters, enjoyed the relationships that it portrayed, especially female friendships and relationships. A very interesting aspect. And yeah, a great way to end the month of March. I think this book kind of picked me up from a few disappointing reads that I'd finished on and ended my March on a high. So I'm very happy and very glad I chose to pick this one out. And yeah, I would urge you all to read it if you're over 18 and give me your thoughts and opinions. So yes, there we have my March wrap up video. 10 books, can't believe it's still 10 books. Sorry that I haven't got this video up sooner. I was hoping to get up at the end of March, but I booked an impromptu trip to Vienna and had a lovely time. So that was very much needed after reading Sunrise on the Reaping, let me tell you. I hope to see you very soon. I've got a book haul planned, and then I will have to be moving lots of books out of my home library, which makes me really sad, but I need to do it. So maybe I will take you guys along and document the experience. Again, thank you so much for watching. As always, if you made it this far through the video, please do remember to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and leave your thoughts and comments below on any of the books that I've read in this video or spoken about in this video, or just generally books that you want me to talk about or you want to share with me, because I love reading your comments. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again very, very soon. Bye!